Hello, once again, welcome to another edition of something that the powers that be won't allow you to see, a effort and futility that means nothing to anybody because no one will ever see it, and I'm just here talking to myself just to hear the mellifluous sound of my own voice, talking to rotten, monstrous bastards, each and every one of you, pointing the finger at somebody else. It's their fault. It's their fault that I'm stuck in a world that's horrible and provides only, benefits for a chosen few and only awareness of the objective truth for the chosen few, while all you just sit around and do nothing. Nothing that makes any goddamn sense, or has any permanence, or have any ability to be able to feel for somebody else's suffering and do something about it. Instead, you're just so freaking selfish and stupid and addicted to pastimes and everything like that. Oh, I love to listen to punk rock because I'm shaking my fist at the powers that be. You know you're not. You're jumping around and bouncing into people and screaming at things out that makes no difference to anybody's life. It gives you an outlet for your angst and your energy with no positive repercussions. You're worthless. At least I know that somebody's blocking these videos from being seen. I'm still making the effort because, God damn it, I'm not going to give up. And I know what I'm doing is right. And today's goddamn top 10 worst of list is worthy of being heard and needs to be heard. And somebody needs to goddamn do it. I'm just so tired of carrying water when nobody else even knows what the hell is going on in the world. Keep pointing fingers. It's somebody else's fault. Oh, they're a cult. Oh, their carnal knowledge is offensive to my delicate sensibilities. I think I'll go kill some abortion doctors. A bunch of frickin' victims sitting out there, letting your souls get gobbled up by heartless monsters, malefactors who have nothing but your own destruction in their heart and desires. And you just love it. You just love it because you'd rather have this sort of fallacy of indifference and delusion of comfort. So you give up all your freedoms to protect freedom. Right. So you let them fight wars for no reason whatsoever, for totally lying to your faces, and you do nothing. Nothing! And they do it over and over and over again, and your reaction is the same every time. Let's do nothing. Let's sit around and watch frickin' March Madness. Oh my God. So today's top 10 list, you goddamn frickin' jagoffs, is top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. Like you'd notice. Oh, give me another freaking happy ending. Oh, heterosexual coupling. Oh, everything is so beautiful and perfect. Heterosexual coupling up your ass, you goddamn closet cases. You frickin' self-centered nobodies. Number 10 of the top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. I shouldn't have to tell you all this stuff. You should all be like sitting here watching this entire video. Every one of these things should be like, oh yeah, Captain Obvious over here. It's Obvious Day on Cam Stupid over here with this guy with the screaming, with the hair and the fat. Killmonger, number 10, Killmonger. Do you know why? Killmonger? Do you have any idea why I would think that Killmonger is an example of sneaky racism? You frickin' insane moron. Because you watch Black Panther. Oh, wow, a black hero. That's a great step. How could something associated with finally having a black hero be racially oriented? Oh no, yeah, they'll just let you get away with that. Well, they'll do anything to provide any downward pressure. Have you been awake at all at any point in your life? I mean, or just kind of sleepwalking your way through on autopilot? I swear to freaking God, if I could, I would go over to each and every one of slap everyone in the face in this whole freaking country. Crazy, numbnut, self-centered, self-imposing jerk-offs, totally ignorant, totally brainwashed, totally victimized, and totally oblivious. Okay, right, so you've got a black hero now. Well, okay, so wouldn't it be great if they could show a black hero? Because most of the villains are also white, too. You ever notice that? Like, there's a few, here and there. But don't you think it's a coincidence that Black Manta is a black guy and the new Aquaman that they've got for the movies, Jason Momoa, is a person of color? I'm not exactly sure what his heritage is exactly, but he's clearly a person of color. So, and then in Black Panther, the movie, gosh, I wonder, they have the Killmonger villain in the movie, and can you help me with this for a second? But it does seem like Killmonger is a person of color too. Wow. So they've got in major motion picture releases and the supposedly liberal frickin' big lie, by the way, liberal media, you frickin' stupid stooge. Killmonger and Black Manta, black villains for black heroes. Why? Because they'll concede that they need to, keep up appearances and toss you a bone with a black hero here and there. But they sure as hell aren't going to allow you to see a black hero beating a white guy. And that's what's going on here. And I've given you two examples of the two heroes of color, that have had their own standalone movies. Well, Falcon had who's the villain of Falcon? I forget. Or was it? No, it was the Captain America who used to be Falcon. I get confused. But anyway, let's just pretend that doesn't exist. I'm a Jag-Up too. Wow, what a big surprise. I'm sure you figured that out already just by frickin' looking at me. You don't judge a book by its cover. You're colorblind. You don't shame anybody for anything. Bull dank. You have totally lied to yourself if you think that you're not rife with hypocrisy, every single one of you. Nobody actually believes any of that garbage in their real day-to-day lives of not judging books by their cover and not shaming somebody for what they look like or how they, what type of vessel that they're living their lives within. Total lies, man. Total lies. It's your fault that it's this bad, not theirs. Those people are born evil. What's your excuse? So, they got Killmonger, and the Killmonger guy is like, at one point it was a well-meaning guy who saw injustice in the world and tried to do it and it drove him nuts and he became a villain and so on and so forth. Right? I don't need you to explain it because you freaking know everything, don't you? But the fact is that they will not show a black guy, a black hero beating a white villain. They won't allow it because of racism. It was the same thing with the first. Oh, they needed to get what's that little poster child of theirs in the NFL football thing from a while back, Peyton Manning. Right? They needed to get, because Dan Marino, they were real disappointed that they kind of missed the boat on getting Dan Marino a trophy or a ring or whatever they call it. And so they were like, Dan Marino was still, commercially viable. And they, remember, they're going up, for endorsement deals against NBA players and baseball players to a much, much lesser extent, and hockey players to zero extent. But they are, fighting for advertising dollars, which gives the leagues more recognition, which brings on more ratings. So, not having Dan Marino with a ring diminished his, sort of lifespan in terms of his commercial value, and the high-end ceiling was greatly diminished. But they weren't going to let that slide with Eli Manning. They learned their lesson. And here is Eli Manning coming to the end of his shelf life, and he's stuck on a team that's okay, right? But they've got a black head coach in the NFL. That's kind of like, shh, don't tell anybody, but the NFL are a bunch of racist bastards, right? I'm sure you've seen it. But anywho, who else wants to sit up in the nosebleed area just so they can be in these luxury boxes and look down upon all of us, the great unwashed and whatnot, and of course have us pay for it and pay tithe. I mean, they've come up for Chicago right now. It's time for us to pay tithe. They got a perfectly serviceable stadium, and they're like, well, we need to worry about the future of the franchise, blah, 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 blah. Why don't you worry about the future of, the viability of the society that you're destroying for once, instead of your own frickin' goddamn luxury boxes? Yeah, so many bastards, and you just let them get away with it. And you listen to them every time they say that, oh, there's a bunch of spoiled kids getting millions of dollars playing a kids game. Yeah? Really? You can say that from up in your luxury box, huh? Where you do nothing. Where you have billions of dollars in your stock portfolios, and you just scream epithets at people when it comes time to renegotiate the collective bargaining agreement, and you have your pals over in Hollywood make a bunch of movies that are anti-union, anti-collectivism, and all that kinds of things, so that you've already gotten public opinion in your favor, and then you sit there and take a dump all over everybody in the whole goddamn world, just for your own luxury items. It's sick. But they got Peyton Manning, they had a real problem. They got a black coach. It's too late in his career for him to switch teams and have all the things develop around him that needs to keep up appearances in terms of at least presenting some rational scripting to justify the fixed games and fixed draft, because they fix all that stuff. They fix the schedule, they fix the draft, they fix the refs and the games themselves. I mean, it's all, they all share the income in the NFL. All the owners share the income from the big income from the TV deal, all the stadium income. That's why they want to ramp up the boxes. The frickin' McCaskey family. What has anybody in the McCaskey family ever done besides marry George Halas's daughter? That entitles them to be multi-billionaires and hold the entire city of Chicago hostage here in 2026. Nothing. These guys just wake up, and it's very, very likely, in my opinion, that they murdered George Halas's son, Mumps, or whatever his name was, Bugsy or something. George Halas's son, who drops dead out of nowhere at 50 years old or whatever it was, who was the rightful heir to the Chicago Bears, and who was very heavily involved in, the operations of the team and everything like that, a very big football guy. And he just drops dead, out of nowhere, and then Virginia's got and that smarmy, what was it, George McCaskey? Mike McCaskey, that's the guy. Mike McCaskey. Hi, I want to suck the blood out of your fetus tissue. Hi, Mike McCaskey. So what did they do? How did they get out of that fix? They needed their money maker to get a ring to boost his viability in the commercial endorsement market. But they had a black coach. Here's what they did. They got a team. Manning was with the Indianapolis Colts at the time, an AFC team. So they got a team in the NFC with a black coach, which just at the time happened to be the Chicago Bears with Lovie Smith. and they got them both to play each other in the Super Bowl, and that way they could show a black coach beating a black coach. And in fact, a light-skinned Christian, very Christian coach beating a dark-complected coach of undetermined religious affinity. And that was fully scripted. I guarantee it. You get my personal guarantee on that one. God damn it. And that's what's going on with Killmonger, and that's what's going on with Black Manta, and that's what's going on in our society at large. They operate on that level, and until you start to recognize these things and they become like second nature to you, where you see this stuff like going like, and stop supporting it, for Christ's sakes. Because it's our dollar votes that matter. Our political votes are useless. It's two parties that are two sides of the same coin. They're all working for the ruling elite. Can you not see that? But our dollar votes maybe can edge them a little bit more towards social responsibility. It might be too late for all that, but hey, what the hell? Is it really that hard for you to just, choose going to maybe an independent theater instead of going to a movie house? Is it really that tough for you to figure that out? That you can act like a socially responsible person and make the world a better place without going out of your way, without enjoying your life any less? Oh, heaven forfend. Number 9, the top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. God damn it, what the... Top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. Number 9, giving the Best Actress award to Meryl Streep for Iron Lady over Viola Davis in The Help. I forgot to jot down the year, but that was sick. Viola Davis won the Golden Globe and maybe SAG. Excuse me. But number 1, Meryl Streep is an a-hole. Let's be honest, self-centered, preening, posh, jerk off of the highest order. And she fancies herself to be so in touch with progressive ideologies and stuff like that. No, she's just self-entitled, egomaniacal, psychotic, really. And anybody who's got as much credentials as she is and the ability to be able to get roles and stuff like that, why are you doing something that helps to glorify somebody who was a malevolent monster like Margaret Thatcher to begin with? Okay? Why would the Academy, if Hollywood is so goddamn liberal, why would they award Meryl Streep the highest recognition in their industry for playing somebody who is as psychotic and dehumanized as Margaret Thatcher? Why? It shouldn't make sense to any of you. You should be thinking about it going what the hell is going on with this place? That you should be able to figure it all out for yourselves, but no, you're all fawning all over. I saw this post, 2 posts over the last couple of days. One where they were praising Eisenhower as being like the original Antifa guy. Are you freaking out of your goddamn mind? Eisenhower was the guy that ushered in fascism into the shadow government back in 1953. After he got elected, the head of the military gets elected to the head of the civilian government, and then after 8 years of playing golf 800 times, by the way, announces as he's on his way out the door that he's turned over the reins of the government secretly to the NSC. And it's now a shadow government that he referred to as the military-industrial complex. He was not. Listen to the goddamn speech. He's not warning us about it. He's telling us that he gave over the reins of government to this police state, and that we're going to have to make sacrifices to accommodate it. Whew. I don't know who said that. Who's been tinkering with your brain, but it's completely. Where were you the first time that somebody told you that NPR was liberal? Goddamn lie after lie. Fair.org did a study on it. 70% of their guests in prime time are right-wingers. The shows that people ascribe that some sort of liberalism to them are all on the weekends when nobody's listening. The tactics that they use are sneaky, trying their very best to paint very right-wing objectives as liberal policies. Or they're supporting, the concrete bike barriers in Chicago, things like that, which are destroying small businesses one after the other by the hundreds, if not thousands, and giving us over to a eternal life of box stores. You thought that Jeff Bezos and Amazon, weren't putting the screws to you, and all the box stores weren't putting the screws to you, trying to get you in with discount prices. That's all going to be gone once competition's gone. So good luck with that. And then, but then you wind up with some self-satisfied, riding in our high horse, Meryl Streep coming in, bashing Trump, in a Golden Globes acceptance speech from around that same era, where she says, rightly so, that he's, disqualified himself, not just from holding political office, but in the human race department, by making fun of the reporter with disabilities. But then within the same sentence, she goes on to say that people who follow MMA or football are, scumbags. I mean, who are you, Meryl Streep? What's your freaking problem that you're such a great? Oh wow, the great and amazing Meryl Streep has condemned MMA and football. Oh dearie. But the problem with all of this is, of course, is that it all becomes whitewashed eventually, because even Viola Davis, who's in The Help now, tries to distance herself from having appeared in The Help and says that it's a bad movie, and she feels disgraced by having participated in it. And then she appears in a movie called Air, which literally is scripted and depicted with all these stars and everything like that to make the heads and founders of Nike seem like heroic geniuses. And I'm like watching this movie like going, Viola Davis, did you really have to do this? And so screw her too. Screw all those fancy pants numbnut sellouts. Number 8, the top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. The ascension of the dog whistle crowd. Okay, so, the problem with, one of the problems with, that is a very basic, objective way of defining the evils of right-wing ideology, is that a lot of what they say and what they talk about and how they communicate with each other has to be done through code words. And virtue signaling and code word signaling and all that kind of stuff, so that because they can't come out right out and say it, they can't come out and say racist jokes and R words and N words and F word, and gay slurs and all kinds of things. They can't talk about it openly. They will talk about it at length and in very uncertain graphic terms. Amongst themselves in private, off mic. You can better believe that. But in public, for them to, because they'll come out when especially they're entertainers that are designed that they artificially manufacture for that demographic, are out there, and they just seem so uncreative and talentless and with no charisma whatsoever. And I think that's the missing ingredient, is that they can't let loose with their real feelings because they're just too dark and abusive. And I'm talking about like Shane Gillis and Kill Tony and Rob Schneider and Adam Sandler and David Spade. That all these guys are making jokes and talking about the level of racism in Hollywood. It's so beyond anything that any human being outside of that circle would think is conceivable. I mean, and I've been there. I speak from firsthand experience. And I saw it's just to the point where it's casual, like it's nothing between these guys. And that's, I think, what that missing ingredient. So you see Shane Gillis on the sitcom that they manufactured for him. And he's like kind of going dad, and stuff like that. And just think like, how does this guy get hired by anybody? And you get, Larry the Cable Guy. It's the same joke over and over again. And you get Saturday Night Live, which is another conservative outlet. Sorry, not sorry. And the same jokes driving to the ground, underwhelming character and comedy and content and, toothless satire and stuff like that. That's become the hallmark of what that stupid ass indoctrinational show is. Remember, they were owned by General Electric. NBC was for the bulk of the run of Saturday Night Live, which was the largest defense contractor in the country. And so, I mean, again, you can judge, you can say what you want about you mimic the brainwashing that you've been given. And I know it's very difficult for you to overcome brainwashing because there's a defense mechanism involved in the brainwashing process that makes it very difficult for you to recognize just how much damaged goods are going on inside your skull. But the fact of the matter is that, name an outlet that's owned by a liberal organization, a major media outlet, a major distribution company. You can't, because it doesn't exist. It does not exist. And these people who own this stuff, they're psychotic maniacs. They're pathological. And they don't have the ability to be able to, or desire to be able to do anything that will actually wind up impacting their stranglehold on all of us. So they're not going to they'll let some people that appear to be, liberal, because they'll give you the softball question, material and stuff that sucks you off, and gives you a happy ending there, whatever it is that you're expecting from these mouthpieces. But take a look at Kimmel and where he comes from in the Man Show and everything like that. This guy's the biggest freaking racist, misogynistic pig in history. And that anybody would see that there's no transformation that's going on. It's an act. It's an act. The guy has a compound out in Idaho, which is the free state of white power, that they got this tiny little Aryan nation thing that they got going on in Idaho. And, Kimmel's got a compound up there. And, he's got his little sidekick, Hispanic sidekick, and he's made to look like a total jerk off. And Kimmel's jokes are toothless, brainless. I mean, just like completely, what you would expect a 6-year-old to say if he was writing a script for a show that was pretending to be liberal. But if you see Girls on Trampolines and the Karl Malone bit that he did in blackface over and over and over again, and this wasn't just costuming as a tribute to Karl Malone. This was real, honest-to-goodness blackface that portrayed Karl Malone as a subhuman. And he did it over and over and over again. And that whole goddamn Man Show and everything like that is just it's the scariest goddamn fascist, show that's ever been put together for anything. I mean, talk about objectifying women. It's the poster child for the objectification of women throughout all of history. It's the absolute worst. And you get all these people, the dog whistle crowd, that will never talk about what their real thoughts are, and they put on these acts. And Fallon, like, who the hell would hire Fallon unless you're actually trying to be, dumbing down people and making them dullards, watching like this. Who anybody gets excited about something they saw on Fallon, is probably, having mayonnaise sandwiches on white bread toast. And yet they're getting like, these, multi-million-dollar gigs all over the place because that's how social Darwinism works. You give all of the money and all the high-profile gigs to certain types of people that you want to be successful. Children of rich people, the dog whistle crowd, the white milquetoast jerk-off nobodies, the brain dead, the eye candy, and people who, sort of like come from, like sellout-oriented types of, like Carmen Electra. Who the hell is Carmen Electra? And why does she have a job? Who are the Kardashians? Why should they have a job doing anything? Half of them are freaking billionaires. Why are these people getting the work? Because of social Darwinism. If you give all the money to idiots and morons and you plaster them all over the media, that way when they have some kind of opinion that occasionally will be required in interviews and will come up as they're promoting their dumbass, useless products, and they'll have to talk about something extemporaneously, and it'll always be something that goes along with the party line because they're incapable of having any depth. They're incapable of thinking independently. They're incapable of saying anything coherent that will make a real difference in the power apparatus of the world and on our lives and making our lives any better or more inspired or more, happy and fulfilled and fill us with vitality. They're sucking all the life out of the room, and the room is our entire culture. Number 7, God damn it. And this goes back away, and I know that a lot of you, sort of look down upon the whole idea of history like you're above it. That happened before I was born. Why should I care? Why? And the fact that you care about something that happened before I was born makes you a jagoff. Yeah, right. So anyway, giving the Best Actor Academy Award to Sidney Poitier for Lilies in the Field. It was the first, I believe it was the first Best Actor Oscar that was given to a black man. And it was for Lilies of the Field. Now here's a guy who was doing at the time just a few of the credits, because I'm not a big Sidney Poitier, maven, but I do know that some of the other movies that he did at the time, let's say In the Heat of the Night, the Defiant Ones, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, or even To Sir with Love, where he's a black guy teaching a bunch of white kids in a class. How does he not get an Academy Award for any of those? Where it's just so much stronger, the goddamn In the Heat of the Night, when he slaps that white, plantation owner in the face, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen in a movie ever. It's just like, finally, the white guy gets slapped in the face. A plantation owner gets slapped in the goddamn face. How do you not just roll over and just give him the award for that? But no, they give it to him for Lilies in the Field. And what's the movie Lilies in the Field about? Of course, you don't know. You don't care. You don't really care. You want a virtue signal and pretend that you're a goddamn progressive-minded person, but you don't do the work. You don't do the heavy lifting to be able to actually make a difference in the world to that effect, to make sure that, that you're not going to allow the world to continue to be unjust for so many people, that you're going to actually goddamn do something for once in your goddamn life that really makes a difference in the world. Instead of pretending, why did you let Trump, all the right-wingers, the MAGA crowd who let Trump get in, how did they do that? Oh, God. Well, it's because you ran a goddamn candidate that nobody liked. And you did it under false pretenses. Where, something went wrong. You had a guy who was falling asleep in the middle of the 2024 presidential debate. How did that happen? All of a sudden he's falling asleep, and then you force him out, and then you don't have any primaries. You don't elect a representative candidate at the convention, which you could have done. I mean, goddamn, in 1968, when LBJ dropped out of the race, he dropped out of the race in March of 1968. It was hardly any time. They had a few, sort of primaries to try to replace him. It was last minute, but they actually wound up getting a candidate out of the Democratic convention. And that's why they protested there, because it wasn't a fait accompli. And he could have done the same thing here, but they didn't. Within 2 seconds after the Biden announced it, you had Hillary Clinton and Bill at the New York Times. You had Hillary surrogates of Tim Kaine and what's that lady's name? The bug-eyed Democratic representative from Florida, Susan B. Anthony, Debbie Wasserman Schultz on NPR. Both of them full-throated endorsements for Kamala. I mean, it's like all lined up, all ready to go. It was a setup. I'm telling you, a garden variety slug should be able to beat Donald Trump in a goddamn race, but the Democratic Party couldn't even lift a finger enough to find somebody who was more valuable than a garden variety slug. And that's what did it, ultimately. You know? Kamala came in last in the 2020, primaries. Somehow gets voted and gets appointed as the vice president, where she becomes more unpopular after 4 years. And the grassroots component of the Democratic Party, where are they? You know, they knew that Joe Biden was kind of wobbly when he got elected in 2020, but did they do anything to try to come up with a grassroots candidate to force them to have a primary season that had some teeth, had some hair in its nuggets? As they say, no. They gave the award out to Sidney Poitier for Lilies in the Field, where he helps a bunch of Nazi nuns build a church. The most ultra-conservative plot line that anybody could have ever come up with. And every other movie that he did, which he was fantastic in, easily deserving of an Oscar for any of them, especially in The Heat of the Night, especially in that movie. And that instead they give it to Lilies in the Field, and nobody says boo about it. Nobody gives a rat's ass. And nobody wants to blame themselves or point the finger at the goddamn Kamala Harris is your candidate? How did it get to that? I mean, seriously, you should have known how critical this was. You should have known how psychotic Donald Trump was. Regardless of his followers, you want to blame it on them so that you can sleep at night. Well, I don't want you sleeping at night. I want you working and praying and reaching out to others and building coalitions so this doesn't happen again. But are you doing that even now? You're just walking around every 5 or 6 months. You've had 3 goddamn marches, and the goddamn ICE Nazis are patrolling the streets right in your freaking neighborhoods and killing people whenever they feel like it. But that's not enough for you. You need to march with some signs, some cutesy signs. I'm helping. Hey, I'm helping. You're not helping. Helping yourself. Be more delusional. Number 6 of the top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. And I'm going to give it to you. A Gal Gadot being cast as the Wicked Queen and the woke remake of Snow White, knowing that she is an Israeli and feels more like a hate crime, designed to make Israelis look as hateful as possible right at the peak of the Gaza war protests. And don't tell me that that's not going on. That's going on. That stuff is definitely going on. And she that whole movie is just like a psychotic effort at social engineering. It's not, nobody was doing that movie through artistic vision or looking to get their unfiltered creative impulses captured on celluloid. No, they were doing that specifically as a campaign initiative to get Donald Trump elected. Just like having Amon Khalif in the 2024 Olympics and that weird, psychotic Last Supper with the guy with his balls hanging out of the bottom of his shorts with a bunch of kids running around at the beginning of the 2024 Olympics. All that stuff, all of that is part of the Donald Trump campaign. They're all in on it. The FIFA people giving them peace prizes and all that stuff, they're all in on it. They're all in on it. They got you screwed over. The people who were protesting the Gaza war on the college campuses, where did they go when summer vacation hit? They all took off. Sorry, Gaza war victims, but we got to go to Turks and Caicos because most of it was a bunch of rich campuses and stuff like that, where the bulk of the protests were, at least the ones that were covering the mainstream media chose to cover. But they, a bunch of richer people that just took off. Sorry, but we're gonna have plenty of material for our TikToks from our vacation resorts and stuff like that. So we don't need our little preening little set pieces and stuff like that to get a bunch of clickbait on our TikTok feeds. And that's the real deal. If you really cared about the Gaza people, you would have been there thick and thin. Thick and thin. You had plenty of time during your summer vacation to be able to just be where you needed to be able to help them out if you really cared about it. And how come nobody's ever protested for anything besides anything that has, something with a Jewish villain involved with it? And I'm not saying that the Gaza war is right. I'm not saying that the means of killing all those people and everything like that was right. I'm not making those judgment calls. I'm just simply saying that if I was a victim in that type of situation, and the only people who were protesting against me decided to take summer vacation off and see it wouldn't want to be I would be disappointed. I'd be crestfallen. I really would. And that's just the way these people are. I'm sorry, but if you're genuinely concerned about something in this world, you don't just turn around and walk away because it's no longer convenient for you to shake your fist at the powers that be. And I just have to add into the fact that the whole idea of, how people are doing protests, they're not doing protests anymore that are geared towards, there's some kind of quote, I forget, is the job of the revolutionary is to make revolution irresistible. And I'm telling you, the people who've been protesting Gaza war and Trump aren't making the revolution irresistible for people who are watching from the sidelines. They're blocking highway spur ramps and stuff like that at choke points during high traffic hours. Like in Chicago, they blocked the spur ramp into downtown on a Monday morning rush hour. They blocked the spur ramp out to O'Hare Airport and the people had to get out of their cars and walk for miles to get to the terminal because they were blocking the O'Hare spur ramp. And tons of people, thousands of people, were late to their jobs who have, probably most of whom in both of those cases were probably, undecided, as many of the sort of day-to-day people can be, unfortunately, in today's world. And you're not making any more friends. You're not making the revolution irresistible when you make them hate you for, putting them out and inconveniencing them, even though they had probably felt like they did nothing wrong. Now, whether or not they actually did nothing wrong, that's another story. But you could have actually gone over to any federal building, blocked the entranceway to the federal buildings, blocked the entranceway to the Chicago Board of Trade, blocked the entranceway to Boeing, the Boeing headquarters in Chicago. And everybody would have been looking at that going wow, these guys are serious. Maybe I should take a closer look. But when you block everybody from getting downtown to work on time on a Monday morning, they're just going to hate you. They'll never find your revolution irresistible. They'll find it a pain in the ass, and they'll hate you for it. So what's the freaking point? What are you trying to accomplish? It seems like you're just, you're the star of your own freaking movie is what it is. And you're like, oh, look at me. I'm Mr. Meeseeks. You are Mr. Meeseeks. And Gal Gadot and the woke remake of Snow White is another sort of thing along the same lines. Disney is not out to represent woke people because they feel a sense of obligation to make it easier on people trying to live their truth or be seen or any type of stuff. Disney is that kind of, couldn't care less about anybody or anything. They're trying to homogenize everybody with everything that they do, turn them into a bunch of, spoiled white people who are, catered and unimaginative and, dulled down. I mean, just take a look at the way that the trajectory of their parks have been going, where they replace sort of unique, individualized rides that were unique to the parks and things like that with just a bunch of opportunities to send you through a themed gift shop. So they turned that crazy, weird Scandinavian ride in Epcot into Frozen the ride. And then they're converting Tom Sawyer Island to, what is it? Cars Land or something, a Monsters Inc. land, and I mean, Toys Story Land and stuff. And then they've got gift shops for every single one of them that are themed along the lines of those particular characters and items. It's all just nonstop merch. And it's just sickness, a disease that, has befouled the human race with this just gunk. And this what the Snow White movie is. It's just more of this type of stuff. It's just a campaign movie for Trump, where they're getting all kinds of people riled up about this. I mean, lousy actress who had, no talent, no good new songs, 7 dwarfs that look crazy, stupid, horrible animation and stuff like that. It's just a junk movie. And it didn't do well because it was a garbage movie. It had nothing worth watching. And plus, it was disgraceful to the old movie that a lot of people have reverence for because they saw it at a time in their lives when their formative years, and they're like thinking like, wow, that's sacrosanct in a certain way, as much as it shouldn't be. Snow White and all the connotations of the happily ever after type of thing, and that sort of being negative type of thing of inducing us into heterosexual monogamy is the only way to get a happy ending out of life, and all kinds of negative types of things. But the fact of the matter is that they did it not out of a sense of artistic expression, but out of a sense of propaganda. And they did that Reagan movie with Dennis Quaid, propaganda. They were all trying to tie it in with the sense of the Ronnie Reagan revolution and all that kind of stuff. Right before they came out, right before the election, giving all those right wingers a little positive jolt of energy, thinking like, wow, we can, Trump is going to take us back to that Ronald Reagan revolution vibe. Yeah, I mean, piece of garbage. All right, so number 5, it continues with top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. The movie Get Hard. So we're sticking on movies now, and sneaky racism is just so much a wide variety of examples to point out. The movie Get Hard was a movie with Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart that I don't know, came out like about 10 years ago. And the plot is Will Ferrell is an insider trader or something like that. He's about to go to prison, and he's petrified that he's going to get shivved. It's just already, I mean, point. And he's a real rich guy, super rich guy. And Kevin Hart cleans cars in his garage. And so Will Ferrell, of course, turns to the only black guy he's ever met, who's this guy who cleans and vacuums his car in the garage, Kevin Hart. And he says, well, look, you're a black guy, so you probably know all about prison life and everything like that. I want you to train me to be ready to go to prison so I don't get shivved on day one. And the movie, it's just, I'm not making this up, I swear to God. It's how horrible our captors are, these malefactors, these beasts. And so they go through this whole thing where Kevin Hart trains them to get hard for prison, and it's just so horrible. And Kevin Hart's this tiny little guy, and Will Ferrell is this big, tall guy. Even the symbolism of having this giant, big, rich white guy and this poor little struggling, tiny black guy is indoctrinational in nature. And it's just this movie that just watching it, you're like going like, who comes up with this garbage? I mean, and it's nonstop now. Every movie is like that. Every movie they're playing a trick on you. There's some indoctrinational thing, some sort of stunt that they're doing in a sneaky way to make you think that it's just some innocuous movie, and they'll get you with your guard down. And that's how they get so many people, on board to be suckers and victims. It's because, the one point where you think you're not being played, you're being played more than anywhere else. Number 4, the top 10 worst sneaky racism. I'm doing the flesh-colored Band-Aids, flesh-colored crayons. There was a time when I was a kid when you had the Crayola 64 box with the 64 different colored crayons, which was the premium box in my day. And, they had sepia and magenta and, sky blue and so on and so forth. And then they had this one unfortunate little crayon that they called Flesh. And that particular crayon was like a peach-ish white person flesh. So you could... I'm not making this up, I swear to God. That's how bad our society is and has been. That they did this, I don't know, probably for decades. I don't know when it ended exactly. I grew out of crayons and stopped buying them, so I don't know exactly when they stopped doing it, but it's my impression that they did it for an unfortunate long time. Now, today, they have boxes of crayons and markers that have a panoply of flesh tones from different races. So that there's, at least now they've modified their actions to be more inclusive. But that's not always the way it was. But you still have, preponderance of Band-Aids are all colored for the flesh of white people. So we still have a overwhelming, embedded, deep sense of sneaky racism going on here. And I'm not kidding. That this stuff, if it's down to obviously all the movies are brainwashing and stuff like that. That's stuff that they can control and manipulate us and have us paying for our own indoctrination and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty obvious. But when you're getting down to the whole idea of having Band-Aids being colored under the flesh of white people is really, I don't know, it's inexcusable. And it makes me feel like there is no representation anywhere in our society for honest-to-goodness human beings. Number 3, the top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. What really happened to Dave Chappelle? Now, Dave Chappelle, I know I'm a grandpa and stuff like that, but through the benefit of having been there, his show was transformative. He had a show. There's only been 2 shows that I've ever known of that have actually represented true progressivism and not just like the sort of, efforts by people to pretend that they're liberal and progressive just to keep you plugged in, like the Daily Show. You know, they don't want people to pull the plugs on the indoctrination devices completely because that can cause a lot of hatred and open a lot of eyes and maybe, you know, condition people to think for themselves a little bit too much. So they do a funny comedy show and make it look like a progressive thing just to keep you plugged in. But you laugh a few times on the Daily Show or whatever, and you're entertained. But at the end of the day, at the end of the show, people who have sworn off news completely because there's too depressing to be informed, are now informed. They got you. They've got you. And that's why that show exists. Amongst other negative things that I'm not going to get into right now. But the fact of the matter is, the only two that have ever existed have been the Dave Chappelle show and the Smothers Brothers show. And the Smothers Brothers show, they threw off of TV because it was too political. It was the number one rated show on TV, and they threw it off because it was too liberal, too progressive. And they were having a bunch of liberal guests on, and they didn't even know what to do with it. And so they just like, you know what, screw you. And it was nothing else like it in the history of television ever again until Dave Chappelle. And Dave Chappelle, for those 2 seasons, galvanized a wide array of people from a lot of different backgrounds, attitudes, ideologies, stuff like that. Got them all collectivized to get something to actually where they could all like really dig and stuff like that. And not just that, but I mean, it was really ripping, a new one for the powers that be. And, like, don't give me South Park and stuff like that. Those guys are freaking ultra right-wing maniacs at best. Libertarians who are just ultra right-wing maniacs in disguise, trying to pretty themselves up so they can be the belle of the ball in Berchtesgaden and stuff. I just don't, take a look at Team America and tell me if you think that the South Park guys are progressive or actually really trying to attack Trump and stuff. It's just, Trump's just Saddam Hussein, the Saddam Hussein character. It's not, and the lead up to the most recent season, they wouldn't even show Trump. They showed his Garrison so that all of the preconceived notions we've had about the Garrison character, we could attribute all that racism and stuff of Trump and MAGA to the Garrison character, one of his big taglines was, "Can we get rid of all the Mexicans?" And then you watch, how degrading that Team America was to liberals and progressives, and you see characters like they buried an atomic bomb in Hillary Clinton's womb, and they have Man Bear Pig showing Al Gore as a complete schizomaniac, and they had a show that God damn it, supported the tobacco industry and anti, Barbara Streisand episode, and on and on, about the Jew Gold episode. And Cartman is just the most racist, hateful character. It's a total hate crime. It's not funny. It isn't funny at all. And the counterbalance with, calling fat jokes to Cartman has zero impact compared to, South Park has indoctrinated vast amounts of Americans into being anti-Semitic. And other characters, like the Mort from Family Guy, and not the Jewish guy, but, while I'm at the whole Family Guy thing, Brian, the dog character, is the only character that has any politics associated with his persona. And they show him to be an idiot, a self-centered moron, incapable, delusional. And it's not a mistake. It's intentional. And they have there's an episode of Family Guy where they make Rush Limbaugh out to be some sort of superhuman visionary. It's the most insane thing I've ever seen. I don't get it where people think that this stuff represents liberalism or progressivism or anything like that. It will never exist. Liberal progressivism will never exploit, people's religion as something to be made fun of or to use it as a tool, a fulcrum to ramp up anti-Semitism to the highest level it's ever been nationwide. I know you feel so much energy and enthusiasm for hatred for your fellow man. I'm not buying it. I'm totally down with the golden rule, man. You're doing to others as you're doing to you. If you're a nice person and you're nice to others and you're giving of yourself and you will accept people, for what they are and just try to learn who they are as the only decision as to whether or not you want them as part of your life. And, is it really that hard? Is it really that difficult? It doesn't seem to make any sense to me that you want to live your life any other way. And what happened to Dave Chappelle is the same thing I believe that they did to the Smothers Brothers. I think they kicked him off the air. I think that he played along with it because they dangled a payday, in front of him, or who knows what else they might have dangled in front of him, and got him to say, well, look, we're going to need you to do a little bit more to destroy your mythos here and stop people from turning you into a martyr or presuming that you really did get thrown off the air by acting like a nutjob and running off to Africa and doing all this crazy stuff to provide a smokescreen to keep people from thinking that you were thrown off the air because you were just too successful and too political and too liberal. But I believe that that's what really happened. And the Smothers Brothers, they told us what they did and why they did it was because of the politics and because of the progressivism and the lefty ideologies and stuff like that. But that was the days before the non-disclosure agreement, which it should be unconstitutional, but isn't. I mean, we need to get rid of, people talk about, and rightly so, that they need to get rid of the Electoral College. They need to get rid of the Senate as a means of being able to have representation for our country, because you wind up having the same representation in the Senate for a state like Wyoming that has 400,000 people when the state of California has 40 million people, and they get the same two members of the Senate. They don't have anybody in the Senate for the Washington, D.C. area whatsoever. There's no representation for that, even though their population is much larger than Wyoming. They're like seventh from the bottom. And Puerto Rico, where's Puerto Rico's representation? They have, I think, one representative in D.C. in the House of Representatives, but they can't vote. What? It's just, it's because, they know that those states would always, be preponderance of liberal minded representation, and that's why they won't give them the vote. I guarantee you, if Washington, D.C. was loaded with a bunch of ultra-conservative residents, that they would have had a senator and a House of Representatives member decades ago. All right, number 2 of the top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. This wasn't all that sneaky, but a lot of people seem to have completely missed it. The end of segregation. The end of segregation. What are you going to say for, I've got a lot of, suspicions about the way the end of segregation was handled back in the 50s. And we were having just about to really ramp up the post-war, World War II economic engines of the United States, which was, based on a couple of different things that we no longer have anymore. First of all, competitive advantage, because so many of the other countries were obliterated because we didn't fight any battles in our own country. All these other countries were just completely obliterated. So we had the competitive advantage where the only people had their factories intact and everything like that, which we squandered away. But then on top of it, you also get the whole idea of ending unions and whatnot was a big part of that. And that's for another episode, they did a lot of things like saddled businesses with the burden of having to pay for people's insurance, so that American companies became less profitable because they had to pay for people's insurance. Then they had to pay for a portion of our Social Security, and that burdened American businesses that a lot of other businesses didn't have to worry about. Then they burdened businesses with EPA and OSHA regulations, and that raised the cost of doing business considerably, and all that kind of thing. These were not efforts to try, other than Social Security, were not efforts to try to help the working class of this country. There's been no effort here anywhere at any of the points that I'm making on today's episode that have anything to do with the idea of helping out the working class. Okay, these were all done to provide smokescreens that corporations could point to, saying like, it's too expensive to do business in the United States, we're going to take our business overseas. And then they got Billy Clinton to sign NAFTA, and that was it. End of story. Actually, it was before that. I mean, Richard Nixon did a lot of those things, and he did that specifically, and he opened up China, and he did all these things to help create the sweatshops and whatnot. So Richard Nixon was really the progenitor of destroying the unions and making it the United States competitively disadvantaged because of all these burdens and whatnot. So you get the another element. I forgot there was one other point that I wanted to make along those lines, but I'm going to have to move along. The end of segregation was done to eliminate blacks from participating in that post-war boom. It was just, all the baby boomers and stuff were being born, the population skyrocketed. And so when population grows, it's the main way for them to get GDP up also. So there's just, more people buying food, there's more people paying rent, there's more people buying houses and everything. It's more people. And that means that it's more profitable for people on the top. And so as populations rose, all these things, like that were once, like a Beatles album was, lucky to get a gold record. 500,000 was like a major league accomplishment. Now they got, multiple songs all over Spotify that have billions of spins and things like that. It's because there's like almost 3 times the amount of population of the world than they had at that point, to a certain extent. So it's not all just winning market share, it's just the market is getting bigger. And they also, that coming in, especially in regards to the television, advent of television, which really started to spread after World War II. And one of the biggest areas where they were able to centralize big bucks was in sports. And the biggest sport, of course, is America's pastime, baseball. And, most people, couldn't be bothered about history, so they don't maybe remember there was a thing called the Negro Leagues, which is a pretty successful league of all black people of color that would play in alternative baseball leagues, which featured some of the best baseball players in all of history, Satchel Paige and others. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. Jesus Christ. Josh Gibson, I want to say. And others. And so they get these big TV contracts, and then this guy comes in, this, the one nice white person in history, Branch Rickey, the general manager for the Brooklyn Dodgers, says, like, I'm tired of this racist segregation of baseball. I'm going to go out and get Danny Bonaducci. And he turns out he was actually talking about Robinson. I'm sorry, I just keep thinking of Brooks Robinson. Jackie Robinson, sorry. And says, well, we're going to do the right thing and we're going to bring in Jackie Robinson. Nothing, absolutely nothing to do with high-minded ideals. Everybody says Branch Rickey was the one. Branch Rickey was the biggest sellout in all of history because he knew when he brought in Jackie Robinson that the Negro Leagues were done. Take a look at the way that the AFL, when they were upstart league starting in 1960, and the NFL, which is the traditional league, 12 teams, whatever it was, 14 teams, and the National Football League was the big league, and then the upstart AFL started like 8 teams, I think it was, in 1960, and in an effort to try and, sort of get ownership in sports leagues, sports teams, and eventually, because they were bidding against each other for the player talent, that they're like, well, we're giving too much money and prestige over to the players. We need to stop this. And they decided to merge. But they merged by bringing all the AFL teams and all the owners in to NFL, and they call the old AFL was called the AFC now, and the old NFL was called the NFC. And they were all under the umbrella of the NFL at large. Well, take a look at how they did it in baseball. A scant 10 years earlier, where they said, if we merge with the Negro Leagues, we're going to have, first of all, most of the Negro teams, I think all but one, were owned by black people. And so they were like, well, it wouldn't do for us to have a World Series, aka Super Bowl of baseball, where they have white teams playing against black teams, because black teams could win once in a while. And they didn't want that. Because, if there's anything more racist than sports team owners in all of history, I'd like to see it. Just let me know. Feel free to send me a postcard. And that's what was going on at the time. So it was like, and plus black managers. I mean, it's one thing to have black players maybe, get lucky in a series or something like that. They could play it off like that. If they were getting their asses whooped, which probably would have happened every so often. But black managers beating white managers, nah. I was talking about this in the earlier part of this episode. They think on that level. They do think on that level. Don't think that they don't. And anything that's ever suggested to you or convinced you that they aren't capable of thinking like that has been wrong-headed and has been indoctrinational in nature and not based on the objective truth. So what they did instead of merging like they did with the AFL and the NFL, they cherry-picked all the best players out of the Negro Leagues and just hired them for white baseball. And by taking away all the best players from the Negro Leagues imploded. And they all went out of business. And here's the kicker. They all went out of business within a year. And they all went out of business, here's the double kicker, right before all the big television contracts started getting negotiated. So that, if the Negro Leagues could have held out for another couple of years, they would have been sitting on easy street because they would have had televised baseball of the Negro Leagues. And this is all done on purpose. And you get redlining and all that kind of stuff and all the other different types of things that they were doing to disable. And then they had localized stores and things like that in black neighborhoods because certain shopping department stores and stuff like that wouldn't let black people in or wouldn't treat black people fairly or kindly. And so you had a lot of black-owned businesses in black neighborhoods and things like that where they had sort of centralized areas of economic fertility that were all destroyed by segregation as well. So it wasn't done with an eye towards fairness and inclusivity. It was done to scoop up that market share and destroy black ownership in America, which it did to a large extent. So mission accomplished. All right, so the top of the top 10 worst examples of sneaky racism. Number 1, the Five Timers Club. Oh, yeah. Five Timers Club. You don't know what I'm talking about, do you? The Five Timers Club is, in my mind, the worst example of sneaky racism that there is. Now, I know that a lot of you people are thinking, like, whatsy, whoosy? The Five Timers Club is a designation for people who have hosted Saturday Night Live 5 times or more. And Saturday Night Live is run by a guy named Lorne Michaels, who I think a lot of people inadvertently ascribe as being a fair-minded, liberal, progressive individual who leans far left and stuff like that. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Lorne Michaels is chugging meat for the ultra-right wingers. I mean, in a big, big way. Lorne Michaels is a fetid stool floating in a toxic waste dump. Just as bad of a human being as could possibly. He's not even qualified for human being status. He's subhuman, monster, sociopath, and he's done a great job for the right wingers at making it seem like Saturday Night Live is true liberalism, but really it's just an act of getting people to point at it, going like, "What a bunch of small-minded jerk-offs," and it lowers the bar. See, what the secret to all of this was they knew that they could never get the bad guys to be better, because the bad guys in our society and our culture are all representing the agenda of the ruling elite, dumbing us down, demoralizing us, dehumanizing us, making us more ignorant, getting us to hate each other, all the various different types of things that our rulers want to see us conditioned by, to make it easier for them to get their groove on. And the yoke of our oppressors becomes a heavier burden and a tighter choke chain because of it. And Lorne Michaels is the brown nosest of the brown nosers, brown nosiest of the brown nose. Well, whatever. But anyway, so they've got this Saturday Night Live 5 Timers Club, and I don't know what, I'm a real big hater of Saturday Night Live, and I think it's an indoctrinational, sick-minded, human behavioral experiment where they're conditioning us just to be dumber. So they're not making they know that they can't make the bad people better, because they're always going to be representing the agenda of the ruling elite. So they're always going to be horrible, inhuman monsters. So what they need to do is they needed to take, the true high-minded people who are looking to, expand equity for all and equal representation for people and all the elements of our culture and the power structures and whatnot, and seek highest level of artistic and creative expression they possibly can. They needed to bring them down so that it would seem these bad people are going to stay the same. If you bring the good people down, you can even the playing field so that everybody's a low life. And that's what they've done. So they've took all the people that we at one point saw being filled by people of true depth and true expressive nature and self-sacrificing and everything like that, and they replaced all those roles with people who were total sellouts and jagoffs, and like I mentioned before, children of rich people, and witless, brainless mouth breathers, and eye candy, and infotainers or whatever, just a bunch of craptastic, surface-minded nobodies. And Saturday Night Live led the way, and that's why we've seen so much trash and worthlessness on Saturday Night Live, because it's one of the leading exponents of indoctrinational hokum. And so the 5 timers list I had something recently. I thought, well, if my theories are correct, the so-called five timers list is going to be very revealing because this will show who's getting the benefit of the publicity in one of the biggest publicity apparatuses in our culture, and if it's filled with a bunch of easily objectifiable uh, types, it can prove a point. So I looked and, did it prove a point? So let me just go through. I have the list right in front of me. I pulled it recently. I'm not sure how inclusive it is for this most recent season. But here we go. So Buck Henry, 10 times as a host. Okay, Buck Henry. A white guy with a, somewhat creative liberal guy. Steve Martin, 16 times as host, a white guy, mostly like inoffensive, sellout stuff, works for Disney a lot. So, Steve Martin, everybody loves him, but he's a trashy sellout. He's nobody. Never done anything that was, other than, making people laugh, never did anything that had any resonating meaning of life other than conformity. Conformity's good. I'm Steve Martin. Hi, how are you? I'm Nutty. Elliot Gould, 6 times as host. White guy. He goes back into sort of the era of, the old school progressive liberals and stuff like that. But white guy, totally white guy. Got whiter as time went on. Paul Simon, 4 times as host, 13 times as musical guest, and 9 times as special guest. So they put him in the 5 timers club for that. Paul Simon, he's an a-hole. I hate Paul Simon. What a complete scumbag for what he did crossing the picket line for the anti-apartheid South Africa boycott just to get the talent to do Graceland, which he just appropriated their cultural mechanisms to salvage his career after One Trick Pony was a big giant flop. And then he kicked them to the curb and picked up on a bunch of people from South America and did the same thing to them. So he's a gigantic a-hole, racist pig. Chevy Chase, 8 times as host, 14 times as special guest. And he goes back to the original sort of like progressive liberal scene back in 75. And he was the one guy on Saturday Night Live that was truly political, and really helped overthrow Gerald Ford. I'm not sure that Ford would have won anyway, but Chevy Chase and his imitation of Ford being a clumsy numbnuts on a nationally televised weekly show was a player in that. And that's back when Saturday Night Live was an actual real show before General Electric bought out NBC. But, I don't know, he got old and white. Randy Newman, 6 times as a musical guest, so they gave him a 5-timer thing for being a musical guest. Randy Newman, of course, was a guy back in the day. Again, he goes back to the 70s doing satirical songs like Let's Drop the Big One and See What Happens. Stuff like that. We'll save Australia. Don't want to hurt no kangaroos. But of course he went to work for Disney. So, I mean, can I get my nose up your starfish any further? Candice Bergen, 5 times as host, 5 times as special guest. Nepo Baby. Tom Hanks, 10 times as host, 15 as a special guest. The whitest cracker in crackerdom. Tom Hanks, who's numerous occasions has sold out. How about Polar Express trying to get us to pay for the advancement, the weaponization of CGI. Castaway, which is a 90-minute, 2-hour-long infomercial for FedEx. You Got Mail, which is a 2-hour-long infomercial for like a lot of stuff, but primarily for America Online. The You've Got Mail is the freaking slogan for America Online when it was like the biggest corporation in the internet, and that also has a lot of social engineering stuff going on about how great and benevolent box stores are. Danny DeVito, 6 times as host, 5 times as special guest. He's another guy who kind of goes back into the day, doesn't do anything really super political or anything like that. It's just, sort of like an entertainer. His movies are all just like dark themes and stuff like that. Doesn't really do anything political or anything that's really meaningful. It's just mindless pablum. John Goodman, 13 times as host, 12 times as special guest. Again, we're talking like super ultra white territory. I've heard this guy talk. This guy is, a waste of life. He's probably trying to hide from the fact that he's super tight with Roseanne Barr. So I got a feeling that John Goodman, I think he's from Louisiana or spent a lot of time down there. So my guess is that he's one of these closet right wingers. But I could be wrong, but I've never seen, when I listen to him in his interviews, it seems like it. Alec Baldwin, 17 times as host, 52 plus times as special guest. Of course, he was doing all the Dandy Don, Donald Trump imitations and stuff back when it almost semi-mattered. But it was all underwhelming in terms of like the virulence that he should have been depicting this guy as a true Hitler. And making him doing something to try to stop him, but he was just sort of mugging for the camera, really. And Alec Baldwin, sold out when he was doing the General Electric character in the one of the worst, most indoctrinational TV shows of all time, 30 Rock, which is spend a third of the time making fun of black people at a level that rises to the amount of racism that you saw in Amos and Andy. And then you've got him portraying a General Electric higher up VP as being human and caring, considerate, and nurturing. Was that in between melting the babies or killing all the brown people out in the Middle East and Iraq? You lousy sellout jerk. Bill Murray, 5 times as host, 4 times as special guest. Obviously, I don't know why that they would call him a 5-timer guy when he was part of the regular weekly cast for years and years and years. So I guess it's just, whatever is clever with these jerk-offs. Christopher Walken, 7 times as host, once as special guest. So, Christopher Walken's complexion is whiter than white chalk. Drew Barrymore, 6 times as host, 7 times as special guest. Again, somebody is just has nothing to say about anything positive. Watch her show, it's just a bunch of like trite, like warm and fuzzies. Life is not full of warm and fuzzies. Life is like there's a wide array of situational exploitations that have come to haunt us and brought us into the brink of extinction. Justin Timberlake, 5 times as host, 6 times as music guest, 1 as musical guest with NSYNC, 8 as a special guest. Justin Timberlake, we're now getting to see the real Justin Timberlake with all this weirdness with his, DUIs and stuff like that, and his just talentless. And we've seen all these movies with him in it as one-note nobody. All those guys are one-note nobodies. Beyonce and Justin Timberlake is one, and what's her name with the face and the thing with the licking the donuts. What's her name? Singing the Wicked. Maybe it'll come to me, maybe it won't. But it's all these one-note nobodies that have absolutely no talent that are getting the jobs just because they're, have already been proven themselves to color inside the lines and not go off script during various different interviews. Ben Affleck, 5 times as host, 2 special guests. Look at the back tattoo on Ben Affleck that he must have gotten in his 50s. Who the hell gets the giant tattoo? What kind of freaky monster? And who'd work, a star, a real big star, doesn't need to work at all ever in their life again, does the movie Air. Just the pathetic. He was in that stupid movie Air. Kanye West, 7 times as musical guest. The only black guy so far on the list so far. Wow, that's going to become a theme for you. Tina Fey, 6 times as host, 29 special guests. And of course, she was on for 2 years. Again, the same type of stupidity that we're seeing with Bill Murray, where they would make him a 5-time thing. It's not, they were on a zillion times as members of the Not Brave for Primetime Players, whatever they call them these days. And Scarlett Johansson, 7 times as host, 10 times as special guest. Again, the child of comes from a super rich family and stuff like that. Ultra white. Melissa McCarthy, very funny. Never heard her say anything that was satirical in nature or anything of her material, which her husband, I think, writes a lot of, that was a difference maker in terms of making society more fair and equitable. But she is super talented and really funny, and I still do enjoy her efforts immensely. Dwayne Johnson, 5 times as host, once a special guest. And here is really, in terms of hosting, is the only person of color that you're going to get on this list. Kanye West was 7 times as a musical guest. And so he's a 5-timer through being a music performer, not through a host. Dwayne Johnson's the only person of color on this list. Jonah Hill, a super disturbing guy who is just... things that he said that he did with his ex-girlfriend were real abusive sounding. And the movie that he did with Eddie Murphy on Netflix, where he one of the characters says that black and white people never get along, it's just too much damage and everything like that, was just it's goddamn spooky and scary. And that movie with him and a psychiatrist is self-indulgent and creepy. Will Ferrell, 6 times as host, 8 times as special guest, and 3 years, whatever the hell is. I mean, I don't get why these people are being singled out for, getting this jacket for the 5-year club when they were regular members of the cast forever. Paul Rudd, 5 times as host, 10 times as special guest. Again, here's a guy who will do anything to sell out. I mean, he's funny, affable, and, clearly has found the fountain of youth, but nothing better. John Mulaney, again, sick-minded sellout, who there's something weird going on with this guy. He's one of the two, along with Nick Kroll, who was the child from a very rich family, who are doing this sick, pathetic, demented show, Big Mouth, that I saw the first episode of it, and they're depicting a full frontal picture of a nude penis of a 13-year-old. I mean, graphically, as a cartoon, and I just don't get it. I mean, where do you draw the line? You say that all these pedophile and Epstein people need to go into prison. Well, you're going to take John Mulaney and Nick Kroll along with them, for that type of stuff, because that type of stuff is in the same ballpark, a team photo. Woody Harrelson, 5 times host, 4 times special guest. Jack White, White's in the name, 6 times as a musical guest, and I don't know. I'm not sure if he hosted or not. My list is unclear. Emma Stone, 5 times as host, 6 as a special guest. Christian Wiig, 5 times as host, 11 as a special guest, and whatever. I don't know. Interminable amount of years of her doing the same mugging for the camera laugh. Shut up, Kristen Wiig. Do another Bridesmaids sequel and make yourself useful. Martin Short, 5 times as host. Jack Black, 5 times as host. So, other than Kanye West, who's a musical guest, there's one person of color is on the 5-timer list for Saturday Night Live. And that should tell you everything that you need to know about American culture and the lack of liberalism. 5-timer host with, how many of them are there to say? Something. 66, 30 of them, and one of them was black, or whatever heritage Dwayne Johnson is. One person of color. And of course, Dwayne Johnson, who's the one person of color who's in this group, is about as white as a non-white person can be, right? In terms of not only his complexion, but his career is just a bunch of nonsense and infantile, underwhelming movies that have nothing to do with anything of depth. All right, well, that's all the time we got for this particular edition of Top 10 Worst Of that nobody will be allowed to see. What a pleasure it's been to waste my time on something like this. Remind you that everything I present here are just a bunch of opinions of a burnt out um, um, nobody who tried to change the world and got punished in every way, shape, or form for having even tried. So, why don't you get lost, you creep, and go do something that's worth a goddamn for once.